Oh shit! Chucky's in the house. What's going on, everybody? This, of course, is for the people who come in late because they ain't nobody showing up right the fuck away. That just doesn't happen. But so glad to see everybody. Man, the last 2 weeks have fucking flown by for me. They've been exhausting, but like in a good way. And now I'm feeling actually, despite like there's been several bumps and things that have happened, I'm actually feeling at a point where I'm really excited moving forward for everything that's going on. You know what? I've started getting more and more organized. You guys can look up there. I got myself. Those are all the projects I'm working on. That's a good chunk, by the way, and I don't even think that's all of them. Oh, okay, cool. I think I have some people happening. Let's make this go so that I can see everybody who's happening. Edit the audience. Oh yeah, we got comments. Great. Brian Manell in the house. Dude, you're awesome. Love it, buddy. Brett Giuliano, bam. There we go. James, dude, are you in the car right now? I love every time we would see James. James hopped on so many videos during the Cthulhu Invades Oz thing. And he was always in his car, and it just became this great running joke. And one day he wasn't, and it just like it ruined it for us. It's like, what? He's not in a car. What even is the point? But yeah, man, dude, great to see you guys out here. Obviously, you guys know we have a fucking awesome guest because I don't know how to have shitty guests. I don't know what that's like. So, you know what? We actually have a good chunk of people. I'm really excited. Feel free to share this out, show it off. I think we're gonna have a great discussion. Get your questions ready for Kira Burton. We're gonna talk prose. We're gonna talk poetry. We're gonna talk it all, man. Let's do it. He says it, but he's not ready. Man, I'm an idiot.
Canadian bacon is actually really good, and it's nothing like normal bacon, and it's better than ham, which you guys seem to call Canadian bacon. I'm very good at writing. I write very well. Yeah, it's Shop Talk.
Do some of your audience members like the word fuck? Cool. Then I'm going to keep saying fuck. Because I care.
It's true. What's going on, girl? How you doing?
What is up? I'm so excited to be on the show finally.
I'm excited to have you. We have this great tit for tat thing. You brought me on to Chaotic Good. And here you are, and I'm really excited to have you out here. Kyron's there. What are we talking? Because she is such an excellent prose writer and poetry writer, we're mostly going to be talking about that. But really, guys, I just kind of
up, man. I'm an open book. Whatever you guys want to ask me, like I'm down.
I sail the ship, but at the end of the day, the wind, storms, everything else, I have no fucking clue where we're gonna end up. So
right.
I love it. I love the live aspect because I can't tell you how often it happens, often both in the same episode, where you have these amazing million moments of brilliance where we're all sitting there learning off of each other, and it's fucking cool. And then you have these total cesspool moments where we're just talking absolute shit about like no one, like if someone came in, they're like, what is this even? And I think the brilliance is having all of that in one show. Like it's just
it's
so
the
much
Muppet
fun.
like chaos that happens when you have like a podcast or a show is very important. Like try doing one with your brother and our friend Kender. It's like, oh my god, it's so hard to control them. Like that's my job. Most of it is going, guys, shut up. No, bad.
And you're the younger sister, right? Because you corral that. You corral that really well, by the way.
I didn't get treated like, I wasn't like the spoiled youngest. I was more, my siblings kind of raised me. So they were like parents to me more than they were, like my brother James is like the father figure in my life, and Stephen very much was too. And so we're colorful. Yeah, yes. That's a word for it.
Especially with hair like yours.
Oh yes, it's do you see the green stripes on the side?
I do.
Too?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my Beetlejuice hair. I want a Beetlejuice hair, so that's what I went with.
I'm a fan.
So yeah, being like raised by my older brothers and sisters, it was an entirely different dynamic. So I didn't get little sistered very much. Usually they would call me when someone was bleeding and I'd have to go fix it because my parents just weren't around. So
You know what? Actually, that's a great segue into how I start most of these shows. And what I'll usually ask my guests, because a lot of them are comic people, is how what is the origin story of comics? So for you, especially being raised by the brother that you have and whatnot, let's just broaden that out a bit because you're a writer, you're a poet. What is your origin to stories and kind of how did all of those things come together for you?
I've been thinking about this question because I know you ask it, and there's like a two-part answer. Well, three-part if you want to know how I became a writer. How I got into comics was it just James is 5 years older than me, and he, from the beginning, like as soon as he could pick up a pencil, was into comics. He was like, "I'm going to make comics. I love Superman. I love Captain America," and I was like, but hate them so much. But he loved all that stuff, so it was always a part of my life. I grew up as a little nerd girl. I had a crush on Gambit and Rogue and Nightcrawler and all that. I grew up as a nerd kid. James was drawing us and having us act out stuff for him when we were 3 and 5, so James always had that as a part of our lives. And he played my first role-playing games with me when I was 9, so I was a nerd. I didn't realize everybody wasn't a nerd. I would go to school and be like, "You guys don't play D&D? What the hell do you do? Like, I don't understand. You hate Captain America." Well, whatever, the Punisher, fine. One of the other heroes I hate. But I didn't understand it. But the other side of it was when I was about 13 and 14. First, James came home with a comic in his hand. He said, "You're dark, you'll like this," and he threw it at me. And I picked it up, and it was Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. And I was like,
Okay.
"Oh my God." And I found Johnny, and I found Squee, and I found, eventually Invader Zim, and all of Yonan Vasquez, and I fucking loved it. Loved it. Got so into Yonan Vasquez, little punk rock kid. Of course, I was totally into it. Loved that world. And then my other brother, Steven, brought home the Liquid Television cartoon of the Max. And that, holy shit, blew my mind. Like, finding Sam Keith in the comic world was huge for me. Like, I was like, that. First of all, he could write women. And I hadn't even seen that before. Someone writing like decent women and writing Sarah and Jenny. I was like, "Oh my God, yes, this is what I'm looking for. Like, I want good, realistic female characters. Like, that's what I want." And so then I got into the world of indie comics with James, and I just stayed there. And so James has always illustrated my work, and I give him poetry for his, and we sort of trade off. So that's how comics became my world, was through weird comics like The Max and like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac. It was through the weird stuff. It wasn't through the, Marvel and, any of the big names. It was through the weird stuff. It always was. It was always going to be. And how I started writing is, I remember the moment I picked up poetry. It's funny because I remember the exact minute. I was 7, and my teacher was teaching us, I know, she was teaching us syllables. So we had to write haikus, and all the other kids are like, "Puppies, rainbows," and I'm like, "The tiger paces in his cage awaiting it was like this deep poem, and the whole class was like, "What the fuck? Like, what are you doing? You're 7." And I was just like, "I'm very deep." And,
Hey kids, what's your deepest fear? That bitch right there, man.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Why is she in this class? I think I scared the teacher as well with what I would write at that point, even at 7. And so that feeling in that moment of people like looking at me like, "What the hell did you just write?" I was like, "That's what I want. That's what I want to have happen for the rest of my life." I was like, that is all I want. That is the sensation I want. And I just picked up poetry from there and practiced and practiced and practiced and got my own style and got my own feel, got my own voice, which takes way longer than you think it does. Anybody out there struggling to find it, it takes a long time to really find like security in your own voice. You know what I mean? Like, anybody can write something, but to find your voice, really, to find who you are as a writer, takes development. It takes time and it takes patience. And I would say to anyone out there who's trying to be any type of artist, really, that if you're working on trying to find your voice, like, give yourself time to develop that, because it'll be all the better when it finally develops.
That's really cool, man. Kyron says he doesn't know if he's met you, but he's met James hundreds of times.
I've been at a couple SatCons with James. I was the girl sitting next to him with the colored hair. But I'm glad you've had the pleasure of meeting my brother.
The pleasure.
The pleasure. The intense upset of meeting my brother.
Gambit, Rogue, and Nightcrawler are some of the most interesting X-Men characters. I agree, actually.
Oh, Gambit and his accent. Oh my God, my boyfriend. I love him so much.
My wife is a huge Gambit fan, and last year I actually won his first appearance. We have, I think, like a 9.8 slabbed comic of that, and I was like, "Hey, baby, who loves you?" And she's like, "Oh shit!" Like, she was so excited. I won that one. I won the first Rogue. There's the first Nightcrawler right up there. Giant size X-Men #1.
I'm like so jealous right now. All my babies, you have them.
All 3 of your babies, I got them, man. I love the X-Men, and here's getting those. That was just me playing poker, man. I can't. I don't have the money to actually go and buy those, so being able to win them was just like a massive huge. And I mean, like that one, it's like a graded 2.5. I don't give a shit. I just want the book.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I don't care. Cool. We got questions. Well, Johnny is a good comic. Thank you.
Johnny is an awesome comic. I freaking love Yonan Vasquez.
I haven't gotten into it yet, but I want to. I've heard so many people citing that as a major thing. So that's really cool. And Brian Manel comes in. He's just great with the questions. A lot of times I don't even have to ask him. I was going to ask this, but Brian, I'm going to let you do it. What made poetry and prose your go-to medium for storytelling?
Poetry, like I said, just came natural to me. I mean, I was 7 and it was like immediate, and I was like, okay, this is it. This is for me. And poetry was just something that I just built on because it was the easiest thing for me to do, honestly. It was the easiest way for me to communicate at a time in my life when I desperately needed to communicate and didn't know how. You know, your teenage years when you don't exactly have the emotional vocabulary, but when you put it down on paper, it becomes something different. Yeah. And I needed that so desperately. So that's where poetry came from. When I started writing prose, it was actually unbelievably hard because all my characters sounded like poets. And so I was like, well, this is terrible. Like, they don't need to sound like this. Like, you're not Percy Shelley. Get out of my book. Like, what are you doing? So what I eventually had to do was base the characters on real people so I could hear their voices in my head. And once I did that, the dialogue came and I got into prose. But prose was a lot harder for me to get into. I was encouraged by some college professors to go into prose. The English department stole me from the psychology department because they wanted me in college. That's what happened. They were like, no, you don't need to be in psychology. Come to the dark side. I was like, all right. So, and I was encouraged to, it was actually funny because I remember the first day in the class when I wrote my book, Thieves of Fate. I wrote it for a short story class. And one of the kids goes, can I write a 3-piece epic instead of 3 short stories? And I was like, douchebag. And that's totally what I did, is I wrote a 3-piece, this 80-page piece of work for this short story class. And everybody's like, this is not a short story, Kira. This is a novella. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, well.
Was that the one that I read?
It is.
Okay.
And
so, yeah, if you guys go, you can find one of the few Chuck's Raw reviews. I think there's 2 that are on prose pieces, and yours was the first one.
Oh, I appreciate it being the first. You gave me one of the best compliments of my life in that one. Or I don't know if it was in that or in a Facebook comment. I think it was a Facebook comment. You were giving people compliments, and I said, I want a compliment. And you said, your book was the perfect length. And I was like, that is the best compliment I've ever heard. Because that's so hard. That's so hard to nail the right length of a book. Like, just, right where it should be. That is one of my favorite compliments from anybody ever.
But, I mean, 80 pages is such an arbitrary, usually people, they want, if you get to 80, they want to get to 100. You know what I mean? And then
Yeah.
and then there's all those people who are like I had a buddy of mine who he was like, I have 140,000 word epic, and I was like, why?
Yeah.
And he was like, because it's a huge, and I'm like, yeah, it's huge, it's unwieldy. You
No
can't tell
one
that story in
cares as
less
much as you
pieces.
think they do
Yeah.
about your side stories. Like, I think what comes from being a poet for so long is I'm very succinct in my writing. I don't throw a lot of needless stuff in there. It is what it is. I write as long as it needs to be, and when the story's done, I'm done.
I think what a lot of prose writers need to know, especially in this day and age where Amazon, like you can write any fucking size book and it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like you can get it out there. But in this day and age, because so many of you go for those epics. You see, those old books that are like, 500 pages, 1,000 pages, whatever. And you're like, I got to do that. I got to do that. War and Peace shit. Just so you guys are aware, those motherfuckers were paid by the word. So, of course, they wrote epic.
I always say that. I'm like, they were paid by the word. It's terrible. It's not a good thing.
No.
Like, unless you're like, okay, like we had Kevin J. Anderson on, and he writes the new Dune series. Like, unless you're writing Dune or something like that, that's actually a really good, complicated epic, don't make your story an epic. I promise you, no one cares as much as you think they do. No one that is invested in it as you. You can have all the secret, wonderful worlds you want. It doesn't all need to be in the book.
Well, and honestly, you can build to the epic. You don't need to just fucking make it. That's what, like, I mean, I like to talk about things like The Simpsons. The Simpsons started, guys, with 5 fucking characters. Now, literally, that entire fucking town is filled with people. Hundreds of characters. Because they kept adding new faces in, adding new people in. The ones that worked, they kept around. They had fun with all that kind of shit. Do that with your writing. Like, think about that shit. You don't need to start with fucking Star Wars, guys. It'll come.
And my next prose book actually takes place in the same world as Thieves of Fate. So I'm adding characters to it. They're not exactly related, but they're in the same universe type of thing. So I'm adding characters to it and being able to use characters that I used before and things like that. And you can absolutely do that and build further on it, but you don't need to start out with something huge and unwieldy and complicated. You just need an idea, and you need a clear, like, feeling for the characters in your head. Like, my favorite thing about, okay, let's talk about James for a minute. James writes a comic called Damage Inc., and he has a character named Sarah that's based on me. Wrong side, Sarah.
Where's the pop?
Oh, yes,
my pop. You got to show the pop. Guys, how many of you motherfuckers have a pop? I'm a comic creator. I don't have a pop.
She's got her little hoodie, too.
Dude, that's great. So that is so cute. Great.
I love my pop. So he says the great and annoying thing about Sarah is she never shuts up. And I'm like, gee, a character based on me that doesn't shut up? How shocking, James.
Best brother ever.
I know. I was like, woohoo. I'm so surprised. And Sarah's ended up taking over a couple of arcs in his comic books just because she was like, I'm in this one. And he's like, what? And she's like, I am. I don't know what to tell you. She's a very forceful character. And I'm like, I wonder where she gets that from. I don't
right? And that's the cool thing about good characters. Is they just insinuate themselves into your writing. There's nothing you can do where you just, because their personalities are speaking at you, you're like, oh, fuck, this one's going to be a Sarah.
Yeah.
And there's really not a lot you can, like, I guess she's steering the ship this time. And there's just not much you can do. Do you find that a lot in your own writing? Like, you feel like a very organic writer?
I'm an intensely organic writer. I don't map things out a lot. I do everything by intuition because, like I said, I grew up a poet, and it's a very intuitive, very it's based on your gut. It's based on your vulnerability and what you feel. So my prose translates into my prose like that. And with my characters, like in Thieves of Fate, Jack is based on my brother Steven. So it just in my ear the whole time Steven was talking and I could hear it. And I'm like, oh, Steven, shut up. I'll put it in the book. Okay, shut up. Like, because he's as bad as I am. So.
Well, look at the kids that you raised, James. Holy crap, man.
We were more trouble than we're worth.
Well, I don't know about all that. But, so, man, I had a good question. Sorry, I got so excited in your story. So, in your writing, like, yeah, okay, yeah. So, you're talking about being an organic writer. Do you find like because I am someone who I like to map it out, but I give myself enough room to play within that map. So I like to leave a lot of space, and everybody knows that. I've said it a million times. They bitch at me about it. I love the outlines, whatever. But I again, also very organic. I want to leave space. Do you find yourself then, after you've done that first run through, going back and going, okay, cool. Now as a writer looking at this, I have to retool and move this? Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I go back. I went back and fixed Thieves like probably 8 times because I wanted it to be a really good story, and I was representing a whole brother, so I wanted it to be, you can't like write about someone real in your life who's like in your life in a good basis and not have it be good. So I was like, I can't mess this up. So I went back and wrote these about 8 times to cover, and plus it's first person present tense, the tense slips. Holy shit. There are so many of them. It's not an easy medium to write with. Like, so many people were told me it's going to be hard. And I'm like, well, that's how it's coming out. So, and I'm like, yeah, I just fixed so many tense slips. Like, it was ridiculous. So, Burton's like, yes, we
chaos born,
chaos. And, we were forged in chaos, and and like James, he does more mapping than I do. I do a little bit of mapping and a lot of thinking about it. It's more sitting there and just thinking and really figuring out how the characters feel to me, how I want them to feel to other people, how the world's supposed to feel. Like, I go very much by feeling. It's not about, like, I can't stand writers like Anne Rice, for instance, that describe scenery for 17 pages. And I'm like, I don't care. It's a stick. Is this important? Like, I write by feeling. So I want people to get intense emotions from my work. That's what I'm going for in the way that I'm organic. So it's all about the feeling that the character, the scene, all those things is giving off. That's very much what it's about. So that's where the way that I'm organic comes into it. I do it with poetry. I do it with prose. It's the same thing. It's very intuitive, and it's got to be vulnerable. It's got to be real. It's got to be raw. That's how I write.
It's funny because when I was very young, I got into writing, and I kept finding myself having to go back. And I was right. Like you were talking about being 7. I remember being 9 years old and writing like a 30-page book, like the start of what would, the first 30 pages of a book. And I kept going back and adding more description because I grew up on guys like Tolkien and whatnot, and so I felt like I had to describe the rock face and describe all this shit, and I would say for the longest time it was very much why I never finished anything. It's a
burden at a certain point.
And then I had a friend come to me and go, you know that you don't have to be that descriptive, right? Like, you seem to really fucking hate it. And I was like, I hate it because I have a fucking imagination. Like, I feel like I should be able to just give enough detail so that the person can finish it off. And they're like, so then why don't you write like that? And I'm like, I never realized I was allowed to write like that.
Like, you very much are. Like, that's immediately what I took to. Like, I don't do big character descriptions, like, of a character's appearance. I'll let you guess, I'll let you guess about the environment half the time. I'll let you guess about the character. It's all about what you're feeling in the moments with those characters. Because, you've seen my poetry, and my motto is love it, hate it, feel something. And that's what I want you to do. I don't care if you freaking hate my book. If it made you feel anything, including rage, yes. Yeah. Give me a bad review. I want to hear your bad review. I love that shit. I love hearing, dude, that sucks. Okay, cool. You read it. Like, I
I
enjoy
love the
it.
ones. I love the ones who give you the bad reviews, but then come super technical. They're like, "Well, the problem with the Act One, oh,
Oh
really,
my god! No,
really?
in
I need to
stanza
write
five,
inside
that
of
was
your
a
fucking
sloppy
cube."
rhyme that, and you're like, oh fuck you. Like, I mean, cool story, bro, but that's not what I was going for, obviously. So
Right? I love that. Brian, again, bringing the author. You can't even see our faces because his questions are so long. It's great. When you write by feeling, do you let your feeling/emotion in real life affect the next parts of your story, or do you have to settle in a particular feeling or emotion before you start writing? If so,
ooh,
how do you get
that
yourself in the right mood to write that feeling?
I think it's both, honestly, because another thing that is eventually probably going to get brought up is I'm bipolar. So sometimes I cannot let my emotions into my writing because I'm like, okay, Mania, you need to shut the fuck up and let me write. Like, stop telling me to do weird shit and let me write this poem and get it out. And sometimes it's very much affected by things that have happened in my life. I mean, my poetry, definitely, obviously, it's affected by my mood and what's happening with me. And you can see, like, if you read New Shoots for the Rain God, my new book, it's in chronological order, and you could probably trace where I'm manic and where I'm depressed in that book. You honestly probably could be like, oh, okay, and I see the curve. So with poetry, it's very intuitive. With prose, it's more of a process of getting in the headset of the character that I'm writing at the time, usually of who I'm focusing on, and then going, okay, let's go. In my news story, I have a character that's insanely chaotic. I have one that's just a sweet little pocket boy. If anybody's not heard me use the term pocket boy before, it's for sweet little boys you wish lived in your pocket. Who little nerdy guys who just are sweet and good and you want to keep them forever. That's a pocket boy. One's a sweet little pocket boy. One's, and they get a little more complex from there, but I have to be in their headset, not mine, to write prose. I have to know what they're doing, what they want, what they need, and I have to listen to them. Like, for me, it is very much about listening to your characters, not pushing them into doing stuff. Because it doesn't work. You can push as hard as you want. They're not going to do it.
Well, and if they do, it's not real. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
won't feel real. It won't feel right. And so that's the thing is that, like, Brian, when you were talking about when you write by feeling, it's not, when you're writing by feeling, it's not necessarily emotive. It's more about inhabiting those characters and really letting them speak to you. And so the
Yeah.
thing is that you've given these characters enough body, enough feel that they're like, yeah, I don't do that. Like I'm not
Yeah.
like that.
They'll pipe up and be like, I don't think so. I don't feel like I would do
Yeah.
that. And you're like, all
Yeah.
right, fine, I'll rewrite it,
And that will come up in lots of different ways. I mean, some people are a little more intuitive and they'll just like, no. But other times you'll write it and you'll just be like, this shit. And
Yeah,
a
this feels
lot of times,
forced.
yeah, and a lot of times it's shit because you force something
Mm-hmm.
that character would not fucking do. And
Yeah.
you just you know it, you just don't know that you know it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, man, yeah, totally, yeah. So the calling it writing by feeling, it's difficult because it's not as
It's not as
emotional as you
simple
would
as that.
assume. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's a little bit more complex than just writing, but it's not like I'm in a room blindly. It's more like I'm in a dimly lit room shining a flashlight on certain areas. I don't necessarily know what the rest of the room looks like, but I've got a flashlight on one part of it. So that's what I'm going for. And I always say with my writing, I'm more of a snapshot person than a painting person. You're going to see pictures, you're going to see moments, you're going to see, whether it's in poetry or prose, you're going to see important moments, you're going to see important sensations and feelings. You're not going to see an entire landscape. It's not how I write. It's not who I am. Like, you'll never see me write probably like, sci-fi or a lot of different genres where you have to do a lot of world building because it's just not I'm a character builder. I'm not a world builder. So that's just, you have to know what your strengths are as a writer.
You know what though? I will call bullshit a little bit, and I would almost challenge you at this point because what I would say is good science fiction does not necessarily require serious, huge world building.
No, you're totally
And
correct because like Philip K. Dick doesn't build worlds at all. He's like, fuck you, I'm not telling you how anything works.
yeah,
Like he doesn't world build at all. Cyberpunk doesn't world build at all. So you're on the nose. It doesn't require it, but usually it's good to have it, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Well, it's true. It was funny. I've told the story before, but I got to write this little short for Antarctic Press, and it's one of my favorite pieces. I love it so much because basically the guy got in touch with me and he's like, "Hey man, I need you to write this thing. The Antarctic Press wants this short," and I was like, "Yeah, I would love a credit with them, so let's do it." And he's like, "Well, what do you need to do?" And I said. I said, like, what do they want us to do? And he's like, oh, you can do whatever you want. I was like, no, find out what they want, and we'll just do it. And so he was like, yeah, they want a 5-page sci-fi short. And I was like, all right, cool. And I ended up finding out as it went, we didn't have a colorist, we didn't have a letterer. I'm like, okay, well then I guess it's going to be silent. He's like, can you do that? And I'm like, well, we're about to fucking find out, aren't we? And so I don't know about you, but I loved having those challenges piled on me because all they did was inform the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
I love having challenges.
I mean, how the fuck are you supposed to world build when you can't talk?
Yeah.
You know, like, so I was like, cool, great. And I got to do this neat little science fiction, which actually doesn't feel like a science fiction until literally the last 2 panels. And then you're like, whoa, wait, what the fuck just happened? So, yeah, man, I think that all of that, any of those can be done. You just have to kind of, you have to be down for the challenge. And the challenge, writing challenge is like, honestly, it's so fun. Guys, go out there and do fucked up things with your writing. Write a drabble, which is 100-word fucking story. It sucks. It's tough. I don't want to write them, but the challenge, it's great.
Like, working with James is always a challenge because we fight over the stupidest crap. Like, it's hilarious. Like, I'll be all, okay, so in Nod, I want to make girls who are flying from it's a fantasy world. So I wanted to make girls come down on silks from the stars. And he's like, well, that wouldn't work based on physics. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It's a fantasy world, you idiots. Like, we argue about the dumbest stuff. It's so... And like when I ask him to draw something, he'll be like, well, that doesn't seem like something I'd draw. And I'm like, you're great.
Hey, I wrote your stupid fucking poetry. You're going to draw my stupid fucking pictures. And that's how this works.
That does not work with James. I'm like, I'd like a picture of a dog. 6 hours later, I've got a picture of 2 girls on a swing set. I'm like, I guess this is going in.
Oh, that's the problem, guys, with working with family. Is they're kind of like, motherfucker, you didn't pay me. I love you, but no. So I'm gonna draw whatever the fuck I want to draw, and I'll write whatever the hell I want to write. I love that. That's great.
We're fighting right now about he wants me to do a poem for Cthulhu in Wonderland for him, and I really want him to use one, and he's not connecting with it all the way. And I'm like, no, I want you to use that one. That's the one I like.
When you say that, does that mean, because I know that we have the poems that come before all of the stories, would you do the poem for his? Is that what he's asking for?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, did you guys talk to Travis about that?
I don't know, James. I believe James talked to Travis about it. I'm behind the scenes really on all of it, so I believe. Okay. But yeah, he put it forth to Travis with it. Yeah.
Well, I'm on board with that. Like, I'm one of the editors of that, and I'm totally on board with that idea. I love that. I actually met about a weekend or so ago. I met the other poet who did. Did you see the poetry in Cthulhu Invades Oz?
I haven't seen Cthulhu Invades Oz yet, but I know I need to get it so bad. I haven't seen it yet.
His poetry is really good. I think you'll enjoy it an awful lot. He really, I think he had the hardest job because he had to get the feel of everybody's works and not give it away.
Yeah. But poetry, that's why poetry is a tricky art. You can get away with hiding a lot in metaphor, and somebody goes back and goes, oh, got it. Like, yeah, you got to read it a couple of times before you're like, all right, yeah.
Oh, he said the poem is in the 8 pages. Oh, okay.
Not before. Oh, yeah, it's in the 8 pages. It's part of it's the actual story for him doing for what he wants to do with, I think, I don't want to give away too much, but for what he wants to do with his characters. It's the actual story for them. So he's going to go along, and it's going to be lettered into the whole thing.
I like
So
that.
yeah.
And I like then that forces another poet to have to make a poem about your poem. And I
That's
think
hilarious. I didn't
that's
even
such
think
a
about
dick
that.
move. I like it's such a dick move, and I love it. I love it. Dave Greschel, if you're out there out there somewhere, fuck. Good luck. That's fun. I want to see that. Oh jeez. What do we got? Okay, so Josh Pantolaresco, who is also another prose guy, another fellow author. Forcing something almost always ends terribly. I call myself a planter. I need to know where the story is going, but I leave room for the characters to boss me around.
Yeah, that's my basic too. I
Yeah.
usually have a beginning and an end, and the middle will come to me as I go along.
Nice.
Like I'll have like a concept for the middle, but I'll let it go where it's gonna go.
Yeah. I don't know those stories as well, but yeah.
I feel like the Martian Chronicles is familiar, but I don't know it all the way.
Is the Martian Chronicles what's his face? John I can't remember. The guy who played Gambit ended up doing that movie anyways, and it did really, really poorly. Poetry has to have a story to it, though. Sometimes you get too cute. Yeah, I mean, that's true, but actually, I would say it doesn't necessarily have to have a story, or at least the story's a little more ambient. Is that
Yeah, no, I totally believe that people do get too cute and too trite with poetry a lot of times. I'm not trying to be an asshole to any poets out there because I try not to judge other people's poetry, but people do get, like, that's why one of the reasons I don't do rhyming, I do freestyle. I think it's cute and trite to do rhyming all the time. It's just, it's a little much for me. You know, like, I'll do some rhyming, but I won't go the whole route with it. It's just too, I don't know, for me. And I think he's right. Poetry has to have a story to it, but I think more it has to have a sensation, a feeling to it. It has to have a feeling that you're trying to get across. The person has to feel something.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's your intense hatred for something, your intense love for something, it doesn't even have to be an intense sensation. It can be, you know, gentle ennui or kind melancholy. See, I'm a poet. Look at me use words.
My intense boredom.
Yeah, it can be boredom, but there has to be a feeling that you're trying to express in a poem that's coming across in a way that people will understand it. That's another mistake a lot of poets make. They'll get too shrouded in mystery, and you'll be like, I don't know what the fuck that was about. That was a bunch of pretty words. I don't know what it said. My dad used to say that to me growing up. Honey, you know a lot of pretty words, but I don't know what this is about. And so I learned to be like a more honest writer from my dad and my brother because they would give me shit when I shrouded it in too much metaphor.
I like poetic kaiju. I like that. I really like that.
Obsessed with kaiju.
Did you have a favorite poet growing up?
See, okay, this is going to make me sound like kind of a jerk. I'm not a huge poetry reader.
Yes.
This is why I'm not a huge poetry reader. Once I realized I was going to write poetry, every time I read poetry, too much poetry, I should say, I would get too into Emily Dickinson, or I would get too into, I don't know, Sylvia Plath or Poe or somebody. My voice would get fucked up. And I wouldn't sound like me. I'd sound like a different writer. And here's another thing that I wanted to bring up. And you can find poetry anywhere. Anywhere. You can find poetry in the chaos of carnage, in Harley Quinn watching a city burn. You can find poetry in Hunter S. Thompson. You can find poetry in Stephen King. I find poetry in bits and pieces of it in my world every day and in every place. So while it makes me sound like a jerk that I don't read a lot of poetry and that I didn't exactly have a favorite poet growing up, I found it everywhere else. Everywhere I looked, there are certain lines. I mean, Fitzgerald and J.D. Salinger, there are just certain lines you pick up and you're like, that's poetry. And that's what I wanted to be able to capture, is those lines, those moments, those instants when they did really beautifully with just such simplicity. That's the kind of writer I wanted to be, so that's how I picked up poetry. It wasn't through reading a lot of poetry, it was through finding it everywhere.
And I love that you said that, because that's so true. There's these great moments in prose where these couple of lines come out, or this metaphor comes out, or something like that, and you're like, yes, it's in a prose story, but that is poetry. Like
Yeah.
I felt that on in a soul, like in my
Hmm.
soul, and I think that, yeah, that very much is. You're totally right there. And I never really considered it, but it's so true. Like I've read some things, and I was like, yeah, that's poetry right there.
Or
That little blurb.
even in comics too, even like I've seen James do action scenes where there's no words and there's just a guy running through like a cityscape or something like that, and I'm like, that's poetry. That's like so fucking cool the way you did that
Yeah,
action. Like, it's poetry. And I've seen other creators, whether it's a comic creator or not, and they just find ways to put poetic things in their work, and it really brings it out and brings it to a different level, even if it's just one line.
yeah. Our sister read Sidewalk Ends to us as bedtime story. You did that?
You might not. My older sister read
Oh, okay.
Sidewalk Ends to us as a bedtime story, and we loved it. We were obsessed with it, and she used to color in the pages when we were done with them. So when my niece was about 5 years old, I colored in half of where the sidewalk ends and gave it to her to color the other half. So I
Oh,
passed it on to the next generation, so we could
oh,
have.
that's so cool.
Yeah, it was a really sweet tradition, and I did love Shel Silverstein growing up. I wouldn't say he was my favorite poet, but I did love him, and I loved Emily Dickinson, and I dig Sylvia Plath to a point, and I like Rimbaud a lot. But like I said, reading a lot of poetry, it ruins my voice. I can't do it because there's a poem in Spilled Ink, which was, I'll admit that Spilled Ink is not like the greatest book in the world. It was my first try at ever publishing poetry. It's not my favorite. New Shoes is definitely a better book if you want to read it. But there's a poem in Spilled Ink that sounds so much like Emily Dickinson. Like, I hate it a lot, but I love the poem, but it's just, it sounds like Emily Dickinson. And I'm like, it's too close for me, but I really like the poem, so it's in there. So yeah, it. I don't read a lot of poetry. I read poetry people bring to me if they want me to read their poetry. I'll do it.
Oh,
I'm going to be an honest critic, though. I'm going to be like, that's not at all what you should have put in there. Like, put down the thesaurus and use real words or whatever. Like, I'm going to be an honest critic because I like it when people are honest with me. I want
yeah,
people to say that word doesn't make sense. I want people to say the rhythm is off in that line. Like, I
yeah.
want to hear that. It's important for me to hear honest criticism, so I give honest criticism. So,
Cool. Sean Barbour came in. Geez, I'm late to the party. No, my
oh,
friend,
Sean.
you're not late to the party because we're still going. So you can ask questions, you can talk it up, you can have some fun with us here in the chat, and we'll even bring you in if you have anything to say. We'll bring in some of your comments and whatnot. But yeah, no, you're part of the live action that's going on. So not late at all. Josh Pantaloresco says there's only a handful of poets I read. E. Cummings is someone I can get something without losing my voice, but it can't happen.
It's always been a struggle for me. I think especially as, like I said, I was developing my voice. My voice is so much stronger in New Shoes for the Rain God than it's ever been before. And it, like I said, it took me a while to develop it to where the point where it was loud. Oh, thank you. It took me a while to develop it to the point where it was actually a loud voice that I couldn't deny,
Yeah.
as opposed to this quiet voice that was just like, write some poetry, Kira. Maybe we can be something someday, And now it's like, no, bitch, write poetry. And I'm like, okay, got it.
I think that's important, and I love how you keep going back to talking about your voice. Because as writers, that's so important, and creators, and whatever you do. I mean, just as you said, poetry isn't everything. Creation, whatever we're doing, that poetry is in there, and a piece of you is in there. And so
Absolutely.
your voice is in those lines you draw. It's in that picture you took, in your perspective, in all that kind of shit. That's how you view the world. And so I think it's really important to remember that and really kind of focus on what is it I want to say, or even how do I want to say it sometimes.
And who do I want to be? Who do you want to be to your audience? Who do you want to be to yourself? Because you have, like it or not, as creators, we have to take both into consideration. Like, there's some pieces of work that are worth it enough to say, fuck my audience, it's going in, you know? And there are some pieces of work where you're like, maybe not so much for this book. You know, you got to think about both.
Totally.
Great. Thank you, Josh. What?
Josh, thank you for coming in. Buddy, come in at the end. I'm going to make sure that she gives everybody her info. So just later on when we're on repeat, you can go check it out on YouTube and whatnot. And I will make sure that her info is in there and you can track down her stuff because it is worth it. I did have a good time. It was one of the first prose I had read in a long time for a reason. So yeah,
I was so glad when you read it. I thought it was so sweet that you got it and decided to do it. And I was like, I just came in and I was like, anybody want to read my book?
Well, what was it? So we were doing, if I remember correctly, we were doing a special thing for Christmas, were we not? It was almost like a Secret Santa, and everybody was trading their books around and then doing reviews. And I was like, hey, whoever I get, I'll do a review on my channel. And I got that and I was like, oh shit, yeah, okay. And I hadn't really pushed myself into prose in a while. And so I don't remember an awful lot necessarily about the story, though it had this kind of, please feel free to just say bullshit if I'm wrong, but it had like a low-key feel to it. There was a God of Mischief feel to it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, there's a goddess of chaos in it. Essentially, she's the goddess of sort of. She's not a goddess per se, but she's named after the goddess of chaos. Her name is Eris, and there is a whole random factor to it. It's about killings and murders and random deaths, and that's who the thieves of fate are. They steal lives from fate. The Greek fates. That's what the thieves of fate are. So yeah, there's a certain feeling of that too. There's chaos in all my work. It's part of my life. It's part of who I am. So chaos is something that's always well talked about in my work. You can't grow up like I did and not put some chaos everywhere.
Yeah, right. I can understand that. So I ended up checking out and I was like, dude, this is fucking cool. So I was really excited to be able to do it. Also, I read a lot of the people's comics already. So it was kind of exciting that I kind of felt like I got a treat. You know what I mean? Like I got to do something
that makes
different.
Me happy.
I very much enjoyed it. I did. Sean, holy fuck, dude. Look at this. Our faces aren't even going to be shown because of how much he talked. All right, Sean, I'm going to put it up there. We're going to try to read it. With everyone in the creative verse just trying to sound like everyone or anyone but themselves, it's a big thing to make note of. We are living in a time where a person's sense of self is lost because nobody is confident in believing anyone wants to experience who they are. Remakes of movies, people who pitch their books with "if you like, then you will love," being the staple of their creative identity. It's the ones that project their own voice that will find new avenues of success. Holy shit. I think it goes on, but I hope can't see anymore, right? and my computer's rebooting, so fuck.
I hope you're right, Sean. I mean, I think you are. I think the greatest writers of the past and the greatest writers that I really enjoy, Philip K. Dick is a big one. I've mentioned him before. He's a huge influence on me. I love Philip K. Dick, Kevin J. Anderson, Stephen King. All those people really found their voices and went with it. Yeah. And I think you do have to, like, I get shit for being, like, having a lot of confidence, because I do. I mean, half of it's total bullshit. Don't believe it. It's a complete lie, guys. It's a complete lie. I'm not remotely this confident, but I sound like I am. That's the important thing.
I felt like confidence in itself is bullshit.
It is.
Like, if we're being, like, perfectly honest, confidence is just the act of you saying, I got this, but you've got no fucking right to know that you've got it. None. Especially when you put it out into the world, fucking anything can happen, guys. Yeah, anything can happen. I've seen, you know what? So 24, which everybody fucking loved. But when they first debuted it, when they were first ready to drop that show, it was literally like 2 weeks after 9/11 happened. And they were like, we're going to hold off for a month or two. And if they had dropped that right after 9/11, I bet you that show would have fucking tanked. Just
it would have been a different story.
Oh,
like I said, know your audience, you know.
Yeah. And so, yeah, you don't know what the fuck the world is going to do when you put it out there. I mean, and
Yeah.
I have a good artist buddy of mine who did some amazing work. He was so excited. He finally got to do interiors for something that was going to be published by a pretty big publisher, and he was like, "Dude, this is it." And as it went out, the pandemic hit, and he didn't get to go to any fucking shows. Didn't get to show it off, and I was like, "Oh, dude." Now, I will say for this guy, he has a second shot, and he's going to be able to do to continue on with that series and bring it out. And I'm very excited for that dude. And he's going to show you some fucking amazing work. But I felt so brutal for him because you can't predict that shit.
Well, the same thing happened with New Shoes for the Rain God. I put it out because my friend had asked me to do a con at the Steinbeck Center in Salinas or Monterey, wherever it is. And I was like, okay, I can do a con. I've been putting this book together for a while. Let me just finish it. And then pandemic. And I've only been able to promote it online, which I suck at. I'm way better in person. So I haven't been able to do a con with it yet. And I'm like, damn it. I wrote a whole book for this, guys. So
the same thing happened with Belial. I was able to get it to one Comic-Con, and then I was like, no problem. That was in October of 2019. I was like, no problem. I'm going to get it to the next one next year. That's not an issue. And my first one was supposed to be in April of 2020. And literally the next time I would sell a Belial live was last weekend.
Yeah.
at a store signing. So like, oh shit, you just don't know what's going to happen. And now I have number 2 coming. So it means that they're really like, for the Texas con people who do know me, I'm suddenly going to come in with this book where I have 2 issues and things are, so that's kind of cool. But Sean came back to us again with a shorter one. Thank you, buddy. Now our eyes are shown. The largest impacts in any arena are from those that speak with their own power, their own experience, and their own voice. When you think of people that changed the game, they all had a unique delivery system and held true to their own style and identity.
Right on, Sean. Yes, I believe that's absolutely true. Having your own style and identity and finding that, like I said, be patient with finding your identity. I mean, I'm 39. I've been writing since I was 7. I feel like with New Shoes, my voice has never been clearer. And I've never been a more honest writer than I have been with that book. But it takes practice to really find something that's personally, uniquely you, that you want to put out there, and to be brave enough. Like I always say about me, I'm braver than I am smart. Like I may be smart, but I'm definitely braver than I am smart. So I'm like, here's some poetry. I don't know, do something with it. Like I'll put it out there, because that's what I mean by confidence is bullshit. I'm just braver than I am smart. Like, because I don't think about the long-term effects of it. I'm just like, here's a book, yay! Like that's what I do.
Your fucking motto says it all, though. Just feel something. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, it really
love it, hate it.
Yeah, someone asked me what my motto was a few years ago, and I didn't have one. And then when I thought about it, I was like, that's it. That's what my motto is, because that's all I want out of you. Like, even if it disgusts you, I want you to be there to be disgusted. I want you to be there to enjoy it, to hate it, to whatever, to make it feel something. That's the whole point of being a poet, especially, is to make people feel things. And I often say on Chaotic Good or whatever, when we talk about my poetry, I trade in vulnerability. And I very much do. I put myself out there in a way that a lot of people are very scared to.
Uncomfortable. Yeah,
uncomfortable. It's not their comfort zone. It's my comfort zone. It's a different way of doing things. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's my comfort zone to bleed on the page. This is my messed up childhood. This is my now. This is my struggle. This is my happiness. Like, you're going to see all of it in my work, and you're going to see pure, unadulterated Kira. And if that's what you want, come get it.
So here's some, because I'm going to be honest, I actually didn't have a terrible childhood. There's honestly sometimes where I'm like, man, I wish my parents sucked. But actually, my dad's a really good guy. He's pretty funny guy. Um, didn't fuck me up too much. Not more than any normal kid. You know what I mean? My
Yeah.
mom's fucking great. I love her. We have a very similar warped kind of dark sense of humor, and I say shit to her. So her here's a fun little story. My stepdad passed away on April 20th, and she I wasn't able to speak to her for 2 days after he died.
Oh.
And that's because all the family was doing their stuff. They were all up there, and my mom was just like, look, I'm gonna need you later. I'll talk to you when I can breathe. And I was like, okay. And I talked to my little brother, and he was like, hey man, he said, mom's gonna need you, but just be patient. I was like, oh, that sucks. But
Yeah.
I knew my job was to distract her. I knew that I had to come in, we were gonna have fun, and we were just gonna we were still gonna deal with it, but it was gonna be different. So this is very personal information, and for those of you who don't like it, this is the Chuck Show, and weird fucked up shit happens. But my stepdad had a dick pump, and it was like surgically attached. He I don't know what it is. He had diabetes, and so he could just go, and he was good to go. And he loved talking about it. He thought it was the coolest thing. Everyone thought it was amazing. And so when my mom gets on the phone, I'm like, hey mom, and right away I was like, the fucked up thing is the first thing you want to say to someone is, how's it going? And you can't kind of do that. And she's like, yeah, no, I can't. You can't do that at all. I was like, yeah, man. So it really fucks up my opener. And she goes, well, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I have another opener. She's like, okay, go ahead. And I said, all right, have you looked over the will yet? And I can hear her voice. She's like, ew, why would you talk about the will? But she knows me. She knows I'm going to go somewhere. So rather than just be like disgusted by me, she's like, no, but really I'm his wife. So everything's just kind of going to get changed over to me. Why? I said, well, I got to be honest. Kind of want the dick pump. What are the chances on that? And she fucking starts laughing. She was like, oh, nobody asked for that. And we had a blast. And we were able to have a good time and still deal with the fact that the love of her life had passed. And that's kind of our voice. You know what I mean? So I don't have a fucked up family. So I guess that long, stupid story gets me around to my little itty bitty question. And that is, a lot of times when we're listening to music, and I'll use a band like Korn, where he constantly spoke about his daddy issues. And then there became a point where it was like, yeah, we fucking know. Now
Yeah,
what?
we got it, dude.
And his music then became difficult to deal with because it was almost like he had to find a new voice.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, do you find that has come up, or do you feel like you're abstract enough in your discussion of the topic that you're okay?
Quick story first, and then I
Yeah.
will tell you the answer to that. When James my brother's a cancer survivor, and when he got diagnosed with cancer, I called him and I said, hey man, and he's like, yeah, there's cancer throughout all my body. And I was like, well, maybe if you weren't being such a baby about it, you'd feel better.
I love that. That's it.
Like, I would just call him and talk to him about stupid shit when he was in the hospital and send him books and stuff. Like, that was my job, to distract him too. So, what was your question again? Oh, does it come up? It absolutely comes up. I'm sorry, but it does. You're going to hear about my mommy issues, and about me missing my dad, and about my grief. You're going to hear about it. I don't harp on it, but it's definitely a part of my writing. It shows up. My love for my siblings shows up. My love for my niece and nephew shows up, but you're going to see that, but it's not something that I harp on. I'm not Linkin Park. I'm not, it's not something that I don't think that I harp on it at all, but it's definitely, especially since my parents died in my early 20s, and I've been processing that since. And Feast of Fate, while it's got this mischief feel to it, and while it's about murder, and while it's about a lot of things, is essentially a book about grief. That book is all about grief when you get down to it, and when you really read the character and how especially the character of Eris and what she's perceiving and what she's feeling. And Eris is like lightly based on me. So grief and those feelings of growing towards forgiveness and all that stuff, it's part of my life. And so poetry, I've always said, is a selfish art. You write about yourself. You know what I mean? And it's not always about yourself, but it's about your feelings about things and stuff like that. It's a selfish art. So of course it's going to come up, but I don't think I'm to the point of like Korn where you're like, all right, dude, thanks. That's plenty, you know, or Linkin Park where you're like, gee, is it another song about daddy issues? Yeah. I don't think
get it. You don't record. Like you.
So and it comes up in other ways. Like, it's weird because I get nostalgic for the time I was really messed up. And so I will talk about that in my poetry. Like, I'll talk about sleeping on park benches when I was a teenager. I'll talk about, growing up the way we did in the chaos that we did quite a bit. I talk about that just because chaos has become so much a part of me and how I affect the things around me and how they affect me, that chaos comes up a lot in my work. So it definitely pops up. I'm not going to say it doesn't, because it's a part of my life. It's always going to be a part of my life. Yeah. But I don't think I harp on it enough that anybody's going to get real sick of me. I would hope.
Right. Brett Giuliano came in. He said, I had successfully finished my Kickstarter for the first comic collection where I didn't do it print on demand in March of 2020. Yeah, dude.
Oh.
That was, man. It's fucked up. Like, what are you going to do? Right. Even Sean was talking about Belial and how, but I actually think that Belial was helped by the pandemic because it took us such a long time to make issue 2 that we were almost able to just kind of make the issue 2, like, we were able to hit so many more new people. So I think actually that was one of the few things that worked well from it. And he goes on to say, I've tried on so many shoes in my pursuit of self by thinking that other people were what I wanted to be, that I finally am just now getting a hold of the fact that maybe I'm the type of person who was meant to have all of those pairs of shoes instead of fitting into someone else's.
Yes, Sean, you were on point tonight, boy. Yes, absolutely. I struggled. Thieves of Fate is also a book about identity, and I struggled with identity a lot in my 20s. I think any kid that grows up with a lot of trauma gets to a point where they struggle with identity. And I had huge identity struggles in my 20s and had to really find my identity in my 30s. And it's taken that time for me to say, okay, I can be chaotic Kira. I can be peacemaker Kira. I can be all these people, and it's okay. And I can be confident in any role that I want to take. So
I will tell you that the flip side of that, as someone who knew exactly who the fuck he was, that's not easy either. Like, I mean, because I knew at a young age who the fuck I was. Like, I knew that I my voice was there. I knew exactly kind of how I talk and the kind of guy I am. And I had no interest in hiding it, to the point where, like, I'm able to have these shit talking sessions with my mom. And most people can never talk to their mom the way I do. But most moms never talk to their kids the way my mom does. You know what I mean? And so, and the problem on the other side of that coin, and I'm sure I'll sound like a big pussy, but whatever. On the other side of that coin, it was, okay, so I know who I am. Now what?
Yeah, what do you do?
What do you do with that? Like, it was nice to know, but I didn't know what to do with it.
The funny thing about my identity struggles is when I was a teenager, I had a very solid sense of self, lost it in my 20s, got it back in my 30s, and I was the same goddamn person. And when I went back to the person that I was like, oh, that was the person that I was. I don't know who that asshole in my 20s was, but I don't know her. But that was the person that I was all along. So I think that I had a very strong voice in the beginning, lost it, got it back. So it's been a journey for me. And I think Sean's right. You have to learn to wear the different shoes you want to wear and be able to put them on and be able to be comfortable in the different roles that you're going to be in and doing the different projects and being parts of different things and being willing and open to try new things and be different than, be who you want to be authentically who you are. And that's been the main topic of the show tonight. I think is just being authentically who you are. It's super important, I think, in all creativity. So no matter what medium you're working in, finding that voice and finding who you are is to me, it's the most important thing you can do, because that's something no one can take away from you. They can take a lot of other stuff away from you, but they can't take that away from you once you find it. Like,
fuck, that's so true, man. So true. Because I can't tell you how often I'm working with someone and you can tell that they're taking whatever they're doing way too seriously.
mm-hmm.
And it's like, dude, you're not writing fucking Watchmen. You're not writing that stuff. And they're like, well, yeah, but no, that's not what you're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't want to read that book a billion different fucking ways. In fact, I don't want to read that style of book a billion fucking different ways. I want to read all sorts of shit. So what the fuck are you going to tell me? What do you have
to bring to the table? What's important about you? What's important to you? Like I said, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be is the question that all creators have to ask themselves, and all creators eventually have to answer, in my opinion. Because who you want to be is who you're putting on the table for your audience to see, for the people around you to see. When you're selling your books, you're putting yourself out there. I mean, James teases me because he says, more than anybody he's seen at cons, do I have people come back to my table with a group of their friends. Some people come talk to me, leave, and come back with 8 of their friends. Like, this is fun to talk to you. Come buy your book. And I'm like, hey, guys, what's up? And I have the worst elevator pitches you can imagine. I'm terrible at them. I'm just good at talking to people. Like, literally, kids would walk by my table, and I'd be like, hey, you like murder? And they'd be like, what, weirdo? And I'd be like, I have this book about murder for you. And they're like, okay. And that was my elevator pitch. Like, I didn't have one. So,
do you like murder?
Yeah.
I don't know, but where's the rest of the night going? Holy shit.
And I have this poster of Phonos, the character from my book, the one with the scissors behind me, and he's all bloody and everything. And kids are just walking up to me, and I'm like, hey, you like murder and or poetry? And so many of them are like, I guess. And I'm like, here you go. Like, but I can talk to people once I can, if I can get them to look at my table, I can go, okay, here's what the book's about, you know. Here's what's up. That's why I always tell people, like, they're like, what's a good elevator pitch? I'm like, you know what? I hear so many elevator pitches when I'm at cons that I get sick of them. Like, I want people to just be honest with me. Like, here, I wrote this poem about my dick. I don't know. Whatever you did.
Hey, man, if that's your voice, whatever, right?
Yeah. I want them to tell me, like, what it is, what blood, sweat, and tears you put into it. Like, that's what I want to hear. I don't want to hear it's like this. I don't want to hear that type of thing. I want to hear the realness of it.
I feel that if anyone was going to write the blood, sweat, and tears of their dick, it would be Sean Barbour.
I feel like it would too.
I feel like, there's your voice, dude.
Maybe Joseph could help him out. Yeah, a little bit.
Right.
That would be a good tag team for that one.
Supposed to be some, right? Yeah. If you guys were to do some dick poetry, I think that would work out. Trish wrote this, right? Trish wrote this and was cute. She said, I am new, now happy for COVID because we found you, Chuck. Sorry for you knowing us, but we are lucky we got to know you. I'm lucky I got to know you guys too. And I'm really lucky that I get to bring you guys along and get to show you really cool people like Kira here, because, man, there's just so much cool fucking shit happening in our universe, in our kind of neck of the woods. And it's nice that I can bring someone like you in here, Kira, and be able to show you off, because I really do enjoy what you do. And I think that it's not always something that's at least in the comic world, that sensitivity isn't shown enough. And so I like that we get to have someone like you on, and people kind of get to go, all right, cool. Let's see what she does, you know?
I'll say another thing for you comic creators out there, and I love you guys to pieces, but stop pulling your emotional punches, man. I see it so much in comics where you just like came so close and you pulled that punch. Nope, punch them right in the face, man. I want to see that emotion in comics. I want to see it. I've given James shit about it before, and he was mad. Oh, he was mad when I told him he pulled a punch. He was so pissed at me for like 2 weeks. But yeah, you have to. I mean, punch hard, come out
Yeah.
swinging. Come out with that vulnerability. You're gonna be thankful for it in the end. Is my advice. And like I said, I've been, even though I'm comic adjacent, and I say that because James illustrates my work. Comic adjacent is my word for it. I do still read a lot of your guys' work and I pay attention to it. And I think that indie comics are great and it's a great world to be in and it's a great world to be a part of. I would never want to be anything but indie. It's the road that I've decided to take and it's the road that I enjoy. So.
Have you thought about writing a comic?
I think that eventually that's something that I'll probably do when I'm ready. James has sort of been training me on how to do it, and we're getting closer and closer to like getting to that point. And I help him with what he writes, but we'll get to the point where we've been working on a script together for a while, but I don't know when it's going to come together. So we'll see on that one.
Because the thing about James is, and James, I love you, but James was hurt bad by another creator. And so because of that, all I want is to see James draw for another writer or write for another artist. And I know that that's going to be fucking painstaking. And so I fucking get it. But I am so excited to see that. And even like when I heard that he was going to be on Cthulhu Invades Oz, I was like, yes. And he did his own piece. And I was like, you fucking asshole. You fucking. Actually, James, I might have a piece for you. Ooh, shit.
Look, James, I'm getting you work.
James, you and I got to talk. I think I actually have a piece for you. Oh, fuck. All right, cool. I think I might have found my artist.
Yeah, I love working with James, though. I mean, it's an experience, but we work really well together and we trust each other. And that's the really important thing. And I think it's not just because I'm his sister that he trusts me. It's not just because he's my brother that I trust him. We just know each other very well. We have good expectations and good understanding of each other. And that's why we can still work together, even though James has been burned so bad. So that's why he still helps me at least.
Brian Manel, writing from a personal space, I think also allows for the reader to more deeply connect with not only your story, but also by extension, you as a person who wrote it. Building that connection through stories is a special thing.
I actually find that unbelievably intimidating. The hardest part of writing the way that I do for me is that people will see me. I'm like, oh shit, a little bit of me came out in that and it shouldn't have. No, like it's painful. Like how vulnerable I get sometimes. I'm like, oh no, God, I'm gonna publish that, aren't I? Yep. Oh no. Like it's hard because I know that they're forming sort of a relationship with me and with my life, and I'm like, that's so weird to me.
But don't you feel that with how often, like, you do podcasts, you do other things, with all that shit together, if someone were to enjoy all of that, wouldn't they kind of get the full picture?
They do. I mean, like, I'm not even gonna lie. I'm a very open book, especially on the podcast. Like, I'll just tell whatever on the. I don't care. Like I'm an open book person, but it's still so weird to think there are people that I don't know out there that are like, yeah, Kira's favorite color is gray, and I'm like, what? And so it's just strange that people know me as well as they do from my work. It's awkward sometimes. Like people will come up to me at a con after they've read my book and talk to me and be like, I love this. What was your childhood like? And I'm like, oh no, stop.
Oh yeah, dude. Brian Manel, I also find that giving your own anxieties a voice is also pretty therapeutic for yourself. It's like you're helping to give those anxieties and dark thoughts a voice, and you're able to start sort of talk and interact with it like a friend in need.
Absolutely. And that's my advice a lot of times. I just gave this advice to a counselor friend of mine when she was asking me how to deal with mania. And I said to treat it like your dumbass friend who keeps coming up with bad suggestions. Like, he's like, clean the house. And you're like, okay, buddy. And he's like, have sex with strangers. And you're like, damn it, Kyle. He's Kyle. We have a good relationship.
I like that.
So that's how you treat your mental illness. And the same way with depression, it's like, kill yourself. What the fuck, Kyle? Like, that's how you deal with mental illness. So,
It's not gonna help, Kyle.
yeah, it's not going to help, Kyle. Why don't you shut up? You treat it like you're a very dumb friend. So that's what I do a lot of the time. And I like murder. Woo-hoo. Thieves of Fate is a fantastic book for you, my friend. It's on Amazon.
It
A
is,
lot of
man.
murder in it.
Oh my gosh, look at what's going on here. Blood, sweat, and tears of the dick. Yeah. Steph Wilson, what's going on, homie? How you doing? I think people are putting, like, I'm just getting this, which I'm sure is gifts and stuff, but I can't fucking see your gifts, homie. He's done that a couple times. Sean, I've said it before, Sean is the fucking master of the gif. He hasn't been doing a lot. But, okay, his memes are killer. It's true. But, like, he'll be chatting with you, and he can chat just on gifs. And he's bringing in, like, just shit where it's like, that's perfect. That's perfect. Like, I know exactly what he's trying to say, and he's not saying shit. It's brilliant. Ooh, we can talk. Yeah, James. Yeah, no, I'm really excited to do that. I think this is literally right down your alley. I've been agonizing over. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna say it out loud. I have a piece for Travis's book. Broke down in 4 Dead Bodies that I did, and it's about the motorcycle gang.
Oh my God,
And
you're reeling them in, Chuck.
I've been agonizing over who can I get who knows. I need like the perfect person who can draw motorbikes. Who the fuck am I gonna get? And then your brother comes up, and I was like, oh shit, this might be my dude. So yeah, we're gonna talk. I hope you like the story, and we'll go from there. But yeah, yeah, no, I said it out loud, so now I'm good. That's the Sean Barbour. That's it. It's the. And now all of a sudden everyone's coming in, and look at this. More of these fucking gifts. You guys are assholes. What the fuck are you doing?
He's doing it on purpose now, James.
Right?
Like,
yeah. Yeah. They're both jumping on board.
Fucker.
Ugh, fuck you guys. We are starting to wind down. If you guys have any final questions for my amazing guest here about her poetry, about her prose, or just about finding your voice or anything like that, feel free to hit us up. Why don't you tell them a little bit about where to find you?
Well, I'm working on building a website, but right now I have Kira Burton Writes at WordPress.com. You can check out my work there. Also, Spilled Ink, Thieves of Fate, and New Shoes for the Rain God are on Amazon. You can buy them there. Or if you want a signed copy, just find me on Facebook. Kira Burton, find me on Facebook. You can PayPal me. I'll send you a signed copy until I get my website up. Watch me on Facebook. Eventually you'll see my website pop up. I just haven't been able to do it because life has gotten in the way.
I love how streamlined you are, because everyone else, when I talk to them, I'm like, so tell us a little bit about where we can find you. And they're like, well, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, just find me on Facebook, dude. It's all good.
Yeah, it's the easiest way. I hate Twitter.
Difficult.
Like, I'm on Instagram as Chaotic Good Kira, but I'm like never on it unless my hairstylist has stories because I love his hair. So, like, I'm never on it. I don't post on it. I don't care. Find me on Facebook. It's the easiest way.
So, Steph loves to fucking call me out. He loves to fucking call me out. He says, I have a question. How about a backdrop, Chuck? The Wayne and Garth studio is lame. Okay. First off, I want you to know something. I put a comic up there. I put a graded comic of mine up there, and I put a piece back here with you in mind. And I got all my dragons and shit going on in other comics. And
mine's so bad compared to Chuck's. Like, leave poor Chuck alone. I've got a cat crate.
He's going to make fun of my fucking thing. But I just did some party on Chuck. Fuck you. I love you so much, dude. But I just did some mad cleaning up in here. So you know what? I'm going to look toward. Do not expect it anytime soon. But I'm going to try to find some. I had a backdrop for a short while. I had my banner. but I had it up for so long that it started to fucking lean, and I'm like, oh
Oh
no,
no.
put that thing
My
away. I can't
banner's
afford to buy a new one.
my banner's in California because I was supposed to do that con, so I don't have it with me, or I would have set it up.
You're in Missouri, right?
Fuck yes, unfortunately.
On purpose. That's.
Yeah, it was on purpose, but I'm not enjoying it.
Are you gonna go? Are you thinking you're gonna go back to Cali or?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, that's the idea.
The light fixture is available at Dollar Tree. You know what? I want to leave this house so bad, but part of me wants to like put something there, like a fucking disco ball or whatever, just so you shut the
You
fuck up.
absolutely
I won't even
should.
turn it on. I'll just have it there. With Sean, with all of his internet monies, you would think he would spring for one of those fancy green screens. All of my
Chuck in
internet money.
space.
Which con were you supposed to do?
The Steinbeck Center was having I can't remember the name of it now, but they were having a big writers con, and they had an artist alley set up for the first time in the Steinbeck Center, and they were doing their own like little mini Comic Con, and that's the one I was going to do, and maybe SatCon that year, and then nope. So we'll see what the coming year brings with hopefully everybody gets your asses vaccinated so we can fix this and go back to con. For Pete's sake, people. I got mine to fix my ass, so there's no excuse for you not to get yours.
I heard recently that it's up to like 41% of the population is
So we only
vaccinated
need
at
to
this
double
point.
it.
Well, yeah, we have to get to, I think it's 70 or 75%.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to think editing makes less money than I thought. Yeah, it totally fucking does. Yeah, I don't know what you think's going on over here, but that's not what's happening. This isn't titty covers money that we're playing with over here, dude. That's not what's happening.
Go to Chuck's OnlyFans, help him out.
Actually, I'm getting I'm gonna get the shirt. Kyron made it. It's great. It says please buy my comics because no one's checking out my OnlyFans. And I was like, oh yeah, that's the perfect. And again, that's about finding your voice. Not a lot of people can pull that shirt off at a convention, but having Belial in front of me, that's fine. That works well because if you're offended by that, oh fuck, do not read my shit. It is not gonna go well for you if you're offended by an OnlyFans shirt. You're fucked.
That's why James has shirts that says "I killed your bitch ass character" to let you know what you're getting into right before you get into the book.
Yeah. So cool. Chuck has one OnlyFans subscription. He took it literally. Yeah, and it was you, dude. You're the subscriber. I appreciate it. He got the premium package too, by the way, which is like the mad butthole pics and everything
all the time.
Well, yeah, because he gets to like ask for things, and by the way, the shit he asks for from me. I mean, it's worth the money, but wow, what a warped motherfucker. Yeah, you deserve that.
And by the way, if you guys ever want to listen to the podcast, we just took a break. We're starting up again this weekend. We're going back to Without Your Head. So if you want to check out Chaotic Good, it's on most of the streaming services, and you can find us on I'm not sure where we're going to be on the Without Your Head side. I will update you guys on that on Facebook as we go along, but we're going back to the Headyverse network. And the podcast is a lot of fun. It's just me, James, and Kender talking shit, talking nerdy, talking mental health. It's a lot of honesty, we say fuck too, Chuck. So, if you like the word fuck, listen to our podcast because I'm all about it. And it's a lot of fun. So if you guys want to give that a shot, we always like new listeners.
And I got to be on the show, and it was a lot of fun, and I definitely got to say fuck. So it was great.
Oh, yeah. We have filthy mouths, so not appropriate for your children.
This is great. Brian Manel says, does the OnlyFans also feature murder, though? That's all part of the premium package, dude. That's expensive, but yeah, it's part of the premium package.
It's expensive, but it's on there.
Yeah, right? So anyway, cool. So guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming out here. Guys, next week is our 25th episode. Holy shit, I know, right? So next week, I don't have everyone nailed down yet, but what I'm going to have is a panel of some of my favorite storytellers, a bunch of guys, a bunch of people that I love to just fucking sit around and talk story with. So if you guys would do us all a favor, pick out some of your favorite things to talk about as far as story. Pick up, and we will gladly go over all of your topics, your questions, all that kind of stuff. And what's great is I'll have a room full of guys who are all willing to shit talk each other's styles and ideas and all that kind of stuff. So let's do that.
Shit too that night.
Right? Dude, please do, and feel free to give us some ideas. I'm so glad. You know what? In comics, 24 is huge because 12 is the first year and 24 is the second year. So 24, usually some serious awesome shit happens on the 25th. Or on the 24th. So thank you so much for being the 24th person on here. We had a talk unlike any other that we've had. Yeah, Steph, we all know whose fault it is. You circle drawn motherfucker. Guys, thank you so much for coming and checking us out. I really appreciated you asking this lovely lady all sorts of amazing questions. I feel like we all left a little more in tune to our own voice. So, as always, this is my amazing guest, Kira. She's absolutely awesome. Please go check out her shit. And my name is Chuck, and I certainly do give a fuck. Thank you so much, guys. Peace out.